Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. You're watching Alaska Weather with us on the 16th of October. Thanks so much for watching tonight. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. 1-800-472-0391 is your way to stay in touch with your forecast on the phone. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. As always, you can find us online at weather.gov/Alaska and on your mobile device. If you're in town checking out AFN this week, of course, try mobile.weather.gov. Type in Utqiagvik and see the forecast that you'll get there. Or if you want to check out Bethel or Chicxulub, any other place will work just fine. And of course, we will be at AFN starting on Thursday. Make sure you stop by the booth and say hi to us. We'll be there all the way through Saturday. I'd love to get a picture made with you there and talk about where you're from in your part of Alaska and hear all about your family. Anytime you want, got a question about what you see on any of these services here, the website, the forecast, or the Alaska Weather Information Line, or anything you've got to want to know about the weather, feel free to shoot me an email anytime, david.snider@noaa.gov. Now, as we look at the weather across the region, no warnings or advisories across the land areas in southeast. Gales are posted for many of the northern and eastern sections. We'll get to the marine forecast here in just a little bit. Across western Prince William Sound, mainly Seward is the issue here. We're looking at a flood advisory continuing through tonight and into tomorrow. More than 3.5 to about 5 inches of rain has fallen in the immediate Seward area just in the last 24 hours or so. I'll show you some of the totals in a minute. But as you would imagine, and as you probably know if you're driving up and down the highway there are some areas of flooded conditions there around the Seward region especially, but certainly a lot of water right there in the vicinity of Seward that will cause some travel problems perhaps, and certainly some more headaches as we go through the next couple days, and there is more rain on the way. A look up north shows a high wind warning for the eastern Alaska range. Those southerly gusts could come up to about 80 miles per hour. Wind advisories for the Denali region all the way through Healy, the eastern Tanana and Deltana Flats region, and the upper 40-mile country up around the upper Yukon as well, in the upper Tanana Valley. You could see gusts there up to about 40 miles per hour. And gusts will also be working its way through the Fort Yukon region. But the further north you go, you're talking about snow. This is all snow here, and a winter storm warning in effect for the north and southeastern half of the Brooks Range. You could see as much as 12 inches of snow, and some of that will affect the Dalton Highway as you're traveling north. Now for the coastal areas from the northern Arctic coast all the way through the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, anywhere from about 3 to 6 inches of snow to about a total of 4 to 8 inches of snow possible. So certainly some of that falling across the region. Also saw some blowing and drifting snow, it looked like, around Prudhoe Bay on some of the observations there. So no question about it, winter is now here for the Brooks Range and certainly for the northern Arctic coast. A snow advisory, or a winter weather advisory, I should say, for areas around Ambler and the upper Noatak and Kobuk valleys. A little bit more snow expected, though, for Bettles, getting into that 4 to 8 inch range at least. So snow is falling, but rain is falling a little bit further south. We've zoomed in on Seward here, and the numbers are a little small here, so I apologize for that. This is 24-hour rainfall totals, and you can see up around the headwaters of the Resurrection, over 5 inches of rainfall just in the last 24 hours. Up around the Bear Lake area, over 3 inches of rain. A little bit further down the highway, about 3.5. In Seward, very close to home there, 3.76 inches up around the Exit Glacier area. Around 4.4 inches. All of this just in the last 24 hours really exacerbating the flooding conditions around Seward. So again, a flood advisory will continue through tonight and into tomorrow. Here's a look at the satellite picture today, and what you're seeing right here, this really long chain of very bright white clouds, is what we're calling an atmospheric river. If you can imagine walking out into a river, you would feel the force of that water coming at you pretty much in a straight line as that water is coming down the channel there. This is a river of water, but it's floating in the air. It's all this atmospheric moisture pointed right at northern parts of the Gulf Coast and the southeast. All of this is hitting the mountains and literally being wrung out, just as you take a washcloth and wring the water out of that. All of this is falling out in short order as it hits the higher terrain. And as that pattern continues to focus on one spot, it's like a fire hose, just pointing that water into a very specific location. So if that's hitting Seward, then you get 3.5 to 5 inches of rain out of that. If it's moving to Yakutat, you get a substantial amount of rain out of that. Some of the wettest parts of the world are right here, simply because of this atmospheric river effect. And as we go through the next several days, we're going to continue to see wet weather in southeast as a result of this, but we're also going to see this pattern kind of shift a little bit back to the west again. So we've got another set of waves or two that's going to work their way up into the northern Gulf and return the rainfall. Now, in the meantime, the moisture is working its way northward, and on the north side of this low pressure system, which is anchored out here around Bristol Bay, we're getting that colder air working its way over the Brooks Range, and that is helping to create more snowfall and certainly some wind, but really snowfall across the north is the added impact from all of the moisture meeting up with the cold all around this very large circulation that is, again, anchored right out here around Bristol Bay at 979 millibars. So one wave is working its way through the eastern Alaska Range and into the eastern Gulf. On the south side of that, of course, that's rainfall. On the north side of that, that's snow, and there has been some areas of fog and blowing snow along the Beaufort Seacoast with that. We'll continue to see snow falling as we head through tonight and into tomorrow. As we get into the overnight hours, and what we saw up around Circle today, in fact, was freezing rain. Looked like it got a decent little coat on some of the trucks and trees out there. So if you're in the Circle area, go slow tonight and tomorrow. Hopefully that will break up a little bit for you there. But there's a possibility we'll still see some of that lingering across the middle Yukon Valley. A better chance that'll be a rain and snow mix, but certainly rainfall as you get into southwest, Kodiak Island, the eastern Aleutians, and the Alaska Peninsula. Out into southeast, again, a healthy south and westerly flow continues, and we expect to see periods of rain across south central as well. Going into Wednesday, the pattern barely shifts at all, so pretty much what you see is what you get. Pockets of rainfall will break up a little bit more across central and southern parts of the outer coast, with high pressure in charge, maybe grabbing a patch of drier air. But we're going to keep an eye on this region right here as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday, because we're going to see quickly a change coming in from the south. Remember, this is a fast-moving southerly flow, and two new disturbances are going to zip northward, and if they work just right with the atmospheric river, they're going to enhance the rainfall one more time. Notice low pressure here across Bristol Bay did not change very much, 994 millibars there, 994 across eastern Norton Sound and up around, well, let's see, that's just east of Unalakleet and northwest of Galena, and then high pressure out across the Gulf of Anadyr, 1,020 millibars, keeping that northerly flow intact across the Bering Sea. So a lot of cold there, and it's helping to draw in colder air up across the Beaufort Sea. That, of course, is freezing a lot of the open water very quickly. We'll take a look at sea ice in just a bit. Thursday's weather, here are the two fast-moving waves, each one of those warmer and wetter than the last. Coming in quickly from the south, it should enhance periods of moderate to occasionally heavy rainfall across parts of the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, the northern Gulf, and probably into southeastern Alaska. So more rain there, and that is great news for southern parts of southeast that has been very parched since summertime, really, and certainly throughout September. It looks like this could be a good rainfall maker for you. Hopefully it doesn't come down all at once, but hopefully it is a reservoir filling weather pattern for you. Across the North Slope, snow will continue there. Periods of rain and snow a little bit further south into the Kobuk and Noatak valleys. South of that, showers for most of the YK Delta to Iliamna and west of the Cook Inlet. Rainfall trying to make its way over the Chugach. It might end up being a little bit of a showery day for the Anchorage region and the western Kenai Peninsula, and then back to the rain for the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern chain, with another wave coming in with a little more cold behind it across the western Aleutians. That's a look at your Thursday weather. A quick check of temperatures for your Wednesday morning. Back in the 20s up north, no doubt this is going to be rainfall, but keep in mind that any moisture at low levels there will have the potential of freezing, so be careful if you're moving about. Low to mid-30s around the Koyukuk Valley there, down toward Galena and Ruby. Lower 40s into Bristol Bay. Sand Point about 47. Southeast, you're looking at temps in the mid to upper 40s. They're pushing 50 in Sitka. Lower to mid-40s around South Central, the Kenai Peninsula, Homer, Seward out toward Cordova. And low 30s around Fairbanks, 25 in Fort Yukon, 37 for a high on Wednesday. Upper 20s to almost 30 for most of the North Slope. Utqiagvik, you're looking at 29. Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, about 28 degrees there. 39 in Nome, 44 around Savunga, 45 in St. Paul. Dutch Harbor on Alaska, you're looking at about 48. And Cold Bay, you're looking at temps closer to 50, lower 50s for southeast. South Central holding on to temps in the upper 40s. Overnight lows will cool off in the upper Tanana Valley and 40-mile country. Mid-20s there, 23 in Fort Yukon. Holding on to temps close to freezing in Fairbanks. South Central, lower 40s, southeast, mid-40s. And high temperatures on Thursday, not a whole lot different. 40s and 50s for South Central, southeast, and upper 20s to 30s up north.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On aviation now, IFR conditions should be fairly widespread across areas in the northern interior and the Arctic coast, as well as up to Kuskokwim and the Yukon valleys. You will see some hit and miss areas of MVFR across southwest where the IFR is not in place in the morning. IFR also expected across the Wrangell Mountains into the Copper River Valley, generally south of the river itself. MVFR conditions really for most of South Central, Kodiak Island, all the way across the Bering Sea. Southeast socked in with IFR in the morning again, with plenty of rainfall occurring there and continuing into the afternoon to keep visibility and ceilings down. MVFR for the rest of the region not under IFR, and for South Central and Southwest, widespread MVFR, hit and miss IFR conditions there. And for the north, Kobuk, Noatak valleys, as well as the Beaufort Sea coast and most of the northern Arctic coast, IFR conditions should continue in through Wednesday afternoon and Thursday morning. IFR will be fairly widespread across the north and into the Kobuk and Noatak valleys, as well as the upper Koyukuk and the Norton Sound region, as well as Unalakleet. Point southward, a little bit of MVFR before you get back into IFR conditions around Bethel and south toward Lake Iliamna. Around Prince William Sound, east toward the Copper River Valley, and all of southeast once again socked in with IFR through the morning. Some improvement for southeast by the afternoon. You'll notice VFR developing across some of the Clarence Strait region into the Stevens Passage area. Northward, Chilkoot and White Pass expected to be IFR. Look for VFR conditions for the upper Yukon and middle Yukon Valley. And then around the Brooks Range, IFR conditions expected to continue there, with marginal conditions around the north coast, all the way down the west, and some very minor and isolated breaks in the MVFR across southern Bering Sea coast, as well as the northern Pacific. Quite a mess. Let's take a look at your pass conditions. Anaktuvik, IFR conditions expected to continue through Wednesday, as well as Adigan Pass looking to be down most of the day. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass also expected to be down through most of your Wednesday. Rainy Pass, we expect to see some changes as we go through the day, maybe some improvements toward MVFR. Also looking for Windy Pass to be see some improvement as we get into the afternoon. Marginal conditions expected there. Isabel Pass may see some improvement, looking for marginal conditions in the afternoon. Mentasta Pass likely holding at marginal conditions really most of the day from the morning onward. Tanita Pass expected to be IFR to start. Some minor improvements as we go toward marginal, and Porter's Pass also expected to be mainly marginal throughout the day. Chilkoot and White Pass, as we saw earlier, expected to be down most of your Wednesday with instrument flight rule only. As we go through the morning hours tomorrow, we expect to see some shifting of that colder air across the west. That's moving southward. As low pressure is trending north and northeast, we're still getting some very warm levels here across southeast, anywhere from 6 to 8 to as high as 12,000 feet as you go south of Haida Gwaii. Around the Wrangell St. Elias and a little bit further eastward into the central Yukon, you can see levels are down below 2,000 feet. And we're going to find similar conditions here up across the north. Don't be surprised to see below freezing levels across the north slope, which will affect the potential for icing there. A lot of that, again, north of the Brooks Range will be cold enough to have some low-level freezing there if any moisture is available, and it does look like there may be some isolated moderate areas of icing potential there at low levels. Now, once you get south of the Brooks Range, those levels climb to about 4,000 to even 6,000 feet, higher around southeast, above 8,000 feet, again with that deep southerly flow working through the region. Here's a jet stream, and you can see that very broad trough across the west coast, not moving very quickly. The fast air across 30,000 feet or so for the North Pacific's coming in around 150 knots and then slamming on the brakes and then picking up speed once again as it moves across the northern Gulf Coast. The ridge out across the west coast still helping to keep that moisture flow aimed right at southeastern Alaska and northern sections of the Gulf Coast. At 9,000 feet, that broad southerly flow here seen around 20 to 30 knots and keeping that moisture aimed right at southeastern Alaska. Southerly winds also keeping milder temperatures around the middle and eastern interior. Low pressure across the Chukchi coast aiming northerly winds pretty much right down the west coast and into the central and eastern chain. At 3,000 feet, just a little bit of a shift in this pattern, but the overall picture is the same. Southerlies across the Gulf Coast, wind speeds around 20 to 30 knots at 3,000 feet. Northerlies coming down the coast around 40 to 50 knots through the eastern Aleutians and even parts of the Alaska Peninsula. The West Coast, the Yukon Delta, and the Chukchi Coast all looking at some of those faster moving winds, so no surprise that turbulence could be an issue with isolated moderate there. Looking for considerable moderate around Point Hope and Tin City down toward just about Nome, St. Lawrence Island, and then certainly the central, eastern, and even parts of the western chain out toward Kiska below 4,000 feet. Considerable moderate may be an issue as you go throughout your Wednesday, with little effects across south central, southeastern, most of the interior. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the rest of your marine weather.
On March 11, 2011, a powerful tsunami hit Japan, destroying cities and villages. As the water receded back into the ocean, it pulled what remained of buildings, cars, boats, and homes along with it. Scrap metals, plastics, and objects of all shapes and sizes either sank near the shore or floated away. In the days that followed, large masses of floating debris could easily be seen by satellite imagery and aerial photos. In the wake of this disaster, NOAA is assessing the potential impact that the debris may have on U.S. shores. So, where will this debris go, and when will it get there? To help answer those questions, scientists are using computer models to estimate the debris' path, using its starting location in the tsunami zone and historical weather and ocean conditions. The findings are that some debris could pass near or wash ashore in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands as early as this winter. Debris may also approach the west coast of the United States in 2013 and potentially circle back to the main Hawaiian Islands in 2014. But scientists caution that there are limitations to what computer models can tell us, now that the debris has moved out of satellite view, and with currents and winds in the Pacific constantly changing, there is no guarantee that the debris will stay on the predicted path. Items will sink along the way, or break up and disperse in many directions. Despite these unknowns, NOAA and its partners are collecting data, assessing possible impacts, and making preparations in case debris does wash ashore. The 2011 tsunami in Japan reminds us that the devastation that happens on land can also become a marine debris issue at sea.
Imagine all of this underwater. In a major tsunami, it could happen. In this part of Washington state, it's happened before, hundreds of years ago. Sometime in the future, it will likely happen again. But we can be ready. If a tsunami strikes, this school will provide a place for people to ride it out above the waves.
We're in Westport, Washington, and right behind me is the very first tsunami vertical evacuation center in the United States.
This is an emergency. Please walk to the nearest exit. Go to the stair tower and proceed up the stairs.
Tsunamis are a potential hazard for low-lying coastal areas. That's why many coastal communities have plans in place to get people to safety, high ground or inland, where they can be beyond the reach of a tsunami. Often there are signs showing where to go and where to gather. Most tsunamis are caused by underwater earthquakes along subduction zones, where two of Earth's plates collide and one is forced under the other. Westport and other Pacific Northwest coastal communities are especially at risk because one of these zones lies just offshore. It's called the Cascadia Subduction Zone. An earthquake here caused a tsunami in 1700 that flooded shores as far away as Japan. Experts say it's just a matter of time before it happens again. Since the subduction zone is so close, a tsunami like the one in 1700 could strike before people in some low-lying areas could get to high ground or inland. And Westport doesn't have a lot of high ground or easy routes inland.
If we get an earthquake or a tsunami, we're going to get a lot of water in the area really quickly, and we needed a place to go. So our community built this brand new school, and above our gym and cafeteria, we have a roof. And so the idea is that we'll get all of our students up, and anybody from the community who needs to get up, they can get up there as well.
Ocosta Elementary School might seem like a normal school, but look more closely. It's engineered to withstand monster waves. Tsunami vertical evacuation shelters must be able to resist the powerful forces that a tsunami brings. Hydrodynamic, buoyant, hydrostatic, and debris impact forces and strong currents. They're also designed to help people get to safety quickly.
There are 4 big staircases on each corner of the building, and each one of those staircases is 8 feet wide, and we can get the whole school evacuated in about 4.5 minutes.
Everybody should be at a 0.
On the roof of the building, there is water and food and buckets and shelters and tarps and blankets and different things so that we can be up there for 2, 3, maybe 4 days while we wait for rescue.
You can go to the top and you know you'll be safe. It feels really nice to have a special building because you feel protected.
This community decided that a tsunami evacuation center was important because they didn't have anywhere to go, and they decided to use their money to build the building. The additional cost is anywhere between 10 and 20% of the actual building cost itself, and that's really a sound investment for a lot of protection. You may be there a while, but you're safe and you're secure, and that's the most important thing.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Time now for a quick check of your sea ice edge, and things are quickly filling in across the Beaufort Sea, where ice is rapidly becoming over 80% concentration levels there for many areas well offshore. This is Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse here, all the way up toward Utqiagvik, but you can also see some new ice forming down around Point Lay. This is the latest analysis as of the 16th. While the ice isn't terribly thick, the concentrations are rapidly increasing, but this is probably about as far west and south as it's going to go, at least in the near term, because we still have some decent winds moving across the region, and the sea surface temperatures here across the Chukchi are still pretty warm. In fact, about 1 to 3 degrees warmer than they were this time last year. So we're not going to see a whole lot of changes here to the west in any short order. This is probably, again, about as far as it's going to go in the next couple days. Anytime you want, head to weather.gov/Anchorage/ice to track the very latest sea ice map, analysis, and the outlook, as well as sea surface temperatures. Now, heading into southeast, southerly winds will be the rule the next couple days as we get into some stronger gusts for the Lynn Canal, 35 knots there, 4-foot seas, 3 to 4-foot seas as you head down further across the inside passages. An onshore flow tomorrow with a southerly wind, 20 knots, 11-foot seas in the north, 10 to 11-foot seas across the outer coast with a 10 to 15-knot wind for Wednesday. And then south and easterly winds working up parallel to the outer coast as we head into Thursday, 25 to 30-knot winds and 9 to 10-foot seas expected. South and easterly winds coming up through the inside passage, 10 to 20 knots with a 2 to 4-foot sea. Continuing on Thursday, and again, more rain on the way. South and easterly winds across south central, 15-knot winds inside of Prince William Sound, 11-foot seas across the northern Gulf, southerlies in Cook Inlet, 10 to 20, with 5 to 6-foot seas expected there. As we go across the northern Gulf on Thursday, south and easterly flow coming through with a 30-knot wind, anywhere from 8 to 9-foot seas, looking for 4-foot seas inside of Prince William Sound, easterlies to 25 knots, and northeasterly winds coming down most of Cook Inlet, 15 to 25, a little bit more of an easterly wind coming across the Barrens, though, 25 to 30 knots with a 6 to 8-foot sea there on Thursday. For southwestern Alaska, look for that southwest wind on the south and easterly side of low pressure, holding very close to Togiak and the Kuskokwim Delta. 3 to 8 foot seas expected there for the Bering Sea coast, and 12 to 13 foot seas expected across the Pacific coast. 5 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait with a 20-knot wind. And for the northern Pacific waters, 25 knots there will continue from the south and west. As we get into Thursday, low pressure shifts just a little bit, and that means all of the winds shift a whole lot, anywhere from the southeast from Castle Cape to Chignik, a westerly flow south of Sand Point, northerlies north of Cold Bay, and southeasterly winds inside of Bristol Bay, 15 knots and 3 foot seas there on Thursday. Looking westward, you can see a strong push of northerly winds sweeping through the central and eastern chain, and look what the openings in the islands do here. Between Nikolsky and Atka, the wind bleeds through, and we get 16 to 19 foot seas on that northwesterly wind at 35 knots. Just to the east, not a whole lot making it through the other side of the islands, with seas only to 11 feet, 17 foot seas on the north side, and 11 to 13 foot seas out across Kiska to Attu, all the way out toward Adak. Again, that opening in the pass makes a huge difference in the sensible weather on the other side. As that works through from west to east on Thursday, you can see that northwesterly flow making its way through, 13 to 14 foot seas there, 6 to 11 foot seas from Atka to Nikolsky. Not a big change in the central and eastern chain, but out west you can see already that return flow coming back in, a south and southeasterly wind from Kiska to Attu to Adak, 7 to 12 foot seas with a 20 to 30 knot wind. On the west coast, northerlies driving through anywhere from 30 to 35 knots in most areas, 10 to 12 foot seas, 13 foot seas around St. Paul and St. George. Northerlies inside of Norton Sound with a 4 foot sea, up to 20 knots there on Thursday, and 20 to 25 in all other areas. 10 foot seas continue for St. Paul and St. George on Thursday. For the North Slope, 7 to 11 foot seas across the Beaufort, 30 to 35 knots across the Chukchi coast. North and easterly winds coming down, looking at 9 to 11 foot seas there across the Chukchi on Wednesday. Thursday, seas diminish just a little bit, 15 to 20 knot winds in most areas. You're looking at about 5 to 6 foot seas in the open waters across the Beaufort Seacoast as we go through your Thursday. Recapping tonight's weather, it's still going to rain across the northern Gulf Coast and southeast. Looking for flood advisories to continue around Seward tonight. Wind warnings for the Alaska Range, the Denali region under a wind advisory, the Deltana and Tanana Flats region, and the upper 40 mile country also looking at some windy conditions and periods of snow for the Brooks Range, as much as 8 to 12 inches for some of the higher terrain. Thanks for watching.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.